Hi, my name is William Savory. I'm chef instructor here at the Community College of Philadelphia in the kitchen circles. I'm known as Chef Bill. One of the things that I enjoy is basically my bake shop class because I get a chance to do a lot of creative things. One of the things we just did in my class was pies, okay? And when you mention pie, what's the first thing people think of? Something sweet, apple, blueberry, pumpkin, but you can make what is known as a savory pie. Take away the sugar, take away the sweet ingredients, and you can put in some savory ingredients, and voila, just like that, you have some savory pies. Not only can you have a pie for dessert, but now you can have pies for dinner, or you can have a savory pie as an appetizer, okay? Now, the definition of a pie, it's a baked food having a filling of fruit, meat, or pudding, or custard. Okay? In this case, when I mention custard, you'd probably thinking, oh yeah, a nice vanilla sweet custard. But today, I'm going to show you how you're going to put together a custard, savory custard, and we're going to put together a loaded vegetarian quiche. After that, I'm going to show you how you're going to put together a shepherd's pie, but in our case, we're going to call it a cottage pie because it's going to have a few more ingredients in it. Shepherd's pie usually is just ground beef, seasonings with a topping of mashed potatoes. The cottage pie, I'm going to put some vegetables into it, as well as the potatoes and a few other seasonings. And finally, the last thing I'll show you is how we're going to make a wonderful chicken pie with some nice chicken meat that's in it. We're going to have a nice gravy, and I'm going to show you how you can top it with mashed potatoes, as well as I'm going to show you how to make some dumplings. You can put it on top, so you can take your pick for your family. So the first thing I want to show you is here's how we're going to make a pie crust. Now I'm using my food processor, and basically what I've already done was I put in my flour. I have 2 cups of flour, and I put in about a teaspoon and a half of salt for flavor. And what I'm going to do is I pulsed it already, okay? What you want to do is you don't want to leave it on, you just pulse, okay? Mix it up. The next thing I'm going to add in is I have about 4 ounces of butter. And I want to pulse this until it gets crumbly. And you'll see, you can see the difference right now, the flour and with the butter. Now when I pulse it a few times, you're going to see the butter should disappear. And the next thing that's going to happen is I'm going to put in some liquid, 7 ounces of cold water. And if you want a really stretchy pie crust, Grandma's secret recipe, put a tablespoon of vinegar in. In this case, I'm using cider vinegar. So here we go. So now I'm going to put half the water in with the vinegar, and I'm going to pulse it again. The dough should start coming together. Okay, that's about 5 or 6 pulses. As you can see, once again, it's starting to get crumbly, and that's what we want. Now here's the rest of the water. Okay, and let's finish it off. Now, you mix it, and you're going to see just until it comes together. All right? And you can see quite the difference. Now what I'm going to do is get a piece of plastic wrap, and in any case, when you're making pie dough, you want to let it relax, okay? Because number one, the gluten network that's in the flour, if it doesn't relax, you're going to get a tough product. In this case here, what I'm going to do is take it out, okay? I'm going to put it on my plastic wrap, okay? Use my hand to get the rest, and you can see it's quite firm, and that's exactly what I want. I can put this on the side, okay? If you were here, you can smell the wonderful cider vinegar. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a flat disc. I'm going to put it in the refrigerator because once again, if you tried to roll this out, it's not. It's going to stick to your rolling pin. So you want to get some firmness to it, okay? Because it is kind of, everything was at room temperature. So now, as you can see, I'll put that in the refrigerator. And at least 30 minutes, then when I go to roll it out, I can get a nice disc, and I can continue the next phase with the dough. One of the other tricks that I've learned through reading and just basically checking with other chefs is the fact that when you make pie dough, okay, you want to get it nice and chilled, because once you roll it out and put it in the different pie plate, you want to let it go back in the refrigerator, because if it's not cold enough when you put it in the oven, it's going to melt down, and you don't want that. So the next thing you want to do is you want to just make sure. Now these pie crust, I rolled it out. I showed you what I did. I used that dough, and basically what I did was that this had been in the refrigerator for 2 hours. So now I want to set it up and firm the dough itself, because if you don't set the crust, when I go to make my egg mixture and put the everything, the vegetables, everything in the pie, it's going to be very, very soggy. So for 8 minutes or so, I'm just going to put these in the oven, and my oven's at 385 degrees. And what will happen is this is going to firm up for me nice. I can pull it out, and then I'll show you how we're going to load the quiche, and we're going to get those going. Should take anywhere from 35 to 45 minutes, depending upon how you make the custard. So we'll get these going in the oven. Okay, I'll set my timer. 8 minutes it is. Now, one of the things you'll notice that I had glass, this is Pyrex. I like to use glass pie plates because one of the things with the pie plates is you want to get something where the heat is evenly going to be distributed. Pyrex is nice and thick. Not only can I see if my crust is done, but it's very sturdy. Here's another. If you want, you can use regular aluminum pans. If you were to go to your grocery store and buy pre-made crust, this is what it would come in. And you could use this. Or you can use a metal pie pan, okay? What's the difference, okay? Very good conductor of heat. This is a good conductor of heat because it's metal. Aluminum, not so much, because once it heats up and you take it out of the oven, it cools down very fast. However, if you want to save on washing and cleanup, you might want to consider aluminum. If you're going over somebody's house and you're not sure you're going to get a pie plate back, you want to use the aluminum. Okay? So those are the 3 different pie plates you can use. One of the other things I'm going to show you towards the end, when we do the chicken, this is the same Pyrex. It's a smaller dish. This would be like for an individual size, or you can also use this if you wanted to for like an appetizer size. So once again, different sizes you can make. Now, while our pies, while our crust is cooking, we're going to set them up in the oven. Let me show you how. We're going to put together the custard that's going to go into our quiche. So now, basically, you can see I'm going to make a custard. I'm using 9 whole eggs. So I'm going to get my whisk. I'm going to mix them up. Now, I want to make enough custard that's going to fill the 2 pies. So this is nice and thick. I'm going to put some milk in. Am I going to measure? Nah, usually by experience. If I had to measure, I'd say probably 2 cups or a pint of milk. In this case, I'm just going to eyeball it. Now, as you can see, if I put too much milk in, it would be more white than it is yellow. But as you can see now, it's mixing up rather well. And I can feel it. It's still a little thick, so I'm going to put a little bit more milk in. All right. Now, the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to season this. All right. It has been my experience that normally 1.5 teaspoons of salt and 1/2 teaspoon of pepper goes a long way for each pie. But in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use 1/2 teaspoon, and I'm not going to use just salt. All right. I'm going to start out with the salt. Okay, now because I'm making 2 pies, I'll put it's going to be like 1 teaspoon of regular salt. Okay. Now for flavor, I'm going to use some celery salt. Okay, it's also going to bring out the flavor of the vegetables. I'm going to use 1 teaspoon there. Finally, I have some garlic salt. I like the flavor of garlic. Brings things out. So once again, here's some more flavoring with the salt. And finally, white pepper. I'm going to put in 1/2 teaspoon. Now when I mix this up, okay, you're saying, hey, this is pretty potent. Well, yeah, but then again too, what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to flavor my vegetables at all with any seasoning. All I'm going to do is load the quiche up with the vegetables the way they are, and then I'm going to pour this in, okay? So yes, it is going to distribute the flavor. And just a tad more milk just by experience. Here we go. That should be fine. So here's our savory custard. We have about 2 minutes on the pie crust, and it'll be coming out. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this on the side for now. Okay. Now, and the next thing I want to do is I'm going to bring out the vegetables and everything we're going to put into our quiche. Okay. As you can see, I have some broccoli. I have some mixed vegetables. I have some red, yellow, green peppers, as well as some caramelized onions, and I have some shredded Monterey Jack cheese. Now, a couple friends, they like the quiche when I make it, and I put some tomatoes into it. I do have some tomatoes. I can cut them up. The only problem is if they're not firm enough, they'll go to mush when you cook the quiche. Let me show you the tomatoes we're going to use, and I'm going to cut these up, as you can see. Okay, they're going to make nice, they're very firm, all right? These are almost like an artisan tomato. So basically, these aren't going to fall apart when I put them in the quiche. Now, since our timer went off, let me pull out the crust, cool them down. Beautiful. There's one. And there's two. Perfect. That was 8 minutes. So while that's cooling, okay, so once again, we have our broccoli. When that cools a little bit, I'm going to begin to load up the quiche crust. I'm going to start out with some cheese, sprinkle on the bottom, onions, mushrooms, mixed veggies, broccoli, finally the peppers. I'll put in the custard, and then back in the oven we go for about 30, maybe 35 minutes, and it should be done, okay? So, as you can see how my custard is, it's perfect. Everything is in solution. So, I trade in my whisk for my ladle, and this way I can just ladle in. One of the things I will say is when you get your crust, if you're doing 2 pies at the same time, don't load one pie and then go to the other. You're going to go back and forth, and this way you're going to have an equal mix and an equal amount of the custard going into each quiche. So, it's cooled enough. Bring it over. All right, here's one. Here's 2. Okay, now the first thing I want to do, put in some cheese. So I'm going to be pretty liberal on the bottom. Okay, 1. No surprises. This cheese is going to melt. If anything else, it will go into solution when I put the custard in. Now, the next thing I want to put in is mushrooms. So I can take a handful and I just want to disperse them. What you want to do is get a good mix. So when you do put your mushrooms in, if you want to layer it, one of the things I will say about mushrooms, these are baby portobello mushrooms. You can use regular button mushrooms if you like, but to tell you the truth, they don't have much flavor. And when you're making anything, it's flavor wherever you can interject it. So in this case here, portobello mushrooms, I had a student of mine say, oh, yuck, they taste like dirt. No, the term is earthy, okay? So that's one of the things. They have a lot more flavor than regular button mushroom. Okay, now to this, we're going to put in some onions as well. Spread those out. Here we go. Now these are caramelized onions. What does that mean? I didn't just saute them, I slowly cooked them, and basically what it does is it brings out the sweetness or the intense flavor of the onion itself. It takes a little longer. Saute onions maybe 5 to 10 minutes. This took about a little over an hour because I had it on low heat. And what I wanted to do was bring out, like I said, the intense flavor. So now we have our onions, we have mushrooms. Let's take some peppers. Okay, these are just red, yellow, and green peppers. Now, one thing I will say about the vegetables I'm using, at one time they were all frozen. You can use fresh if you like, if you want to spend the time to blanch, or you can buy frozen. I would not suggest that you use any kind of canned vegetables. They're too mushy. They're too soft sitting in the brine. So what you want to do is you want to use frozen. What I did was I just took them out, I let them set, I drained them, so this way there was no extra moisture. Finally, we're going to put some broccoli in, all right? The florets, here we go. Now, the broccoli and the rest of the vegetables, yes, they will soften up as the quiche cooks. Okay, we have that in, and another little piece here. And just for good measure, I'll put some more cheese on top. Here we go. Now, and remember, I'm not putting any extra salt or any pepper because I already have it in my batter. So, remember I always said 1 and 1. Here's 1. Go right down the middle, okay? Because this way, anything you do in the middle, it's going to spread to the outside. You don't want to start on the outside. You're not going to get an even mix with your custard. So basically, right in the middle. And you'll see how it's going to start to fill right up, okay? Now, if you find that there's some pieces of vegetable that happen to be above, that aren't covered, no problem at all. They will still cook. All right, let's see. How am I doing so far? Not too bad. Here we go. I might have a little left over. All right, here we go. Now, if I wanted to, I can push this down, but for the most part, it's not bad. Maybe just a tad more. It's better to have a little left over and not need it than to have, you know, you need more batter and then you have to stop and make it again. Just a tad more. Here we go. All right. And you can see we have our quiche. Okay, we put our custard in. So the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to put them back in the oven and I'm going to set my timer 35 minutes and we'll take a look. Let's see, they're not that hot, which is good. Either that or like my chef friend Paul McCormick says, no brain, no pain. Okay, so now let's set it up. 35 minutes, and that should be right on the money. Now, if I were using a convection oven, I could get by with less time. I prefer to use a regular static oven only because when you use a convection oven, the airflow around has a tendency to push the egg mixture over and you won't get even browning. That's one of the problems with a convection oven. So if you do have it, if you do have a convection oven in your house, you can either turn it on to a low fan, but then you're going to have to rotate, I would say, every 10 minutes. Okay, so now what we're going to do is I want to show you, all right, I had some meat for the ground beef. The next thing I want to work on is going to be the shepherd's pie or the cottage pie. So what I'm going to do, I want to show you, okay, this is the meat that's browned off. Now it's cold, and what I'm going to do to finish this is I have some very super fine flour that I'm going to toss into this that's going to help make a gravy. And I have some beef broth that I also have mixed in 2 tablespoons of tomato paste and 1.5 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce. So that's all going to go in here, but the first thing, like I said, is I'm going to put in this super fine flour. Okay. I'm going to use the onion spoon because number one, I will be turning around and using that. Now in this case here, I want to get it heated up, so I'll turn my stove on. There we go. All right, and I want to get the meat heated up, and this way I can make a nice gravy, and then I can put it right in my pie plate. You can use regular all-purpose flour, but I prefer to use the superfine flour because, as you can see, it coats much better and it goes into solution. If you were making gravy at home, this is particularly one of the things that you would use, superfine. You can just take the pan drippings and just go ahead and mix it with the flour, and you get a nice, very nice sauce without any lumps. If you use like an all-purpose flour and have to make a roux, it's just not going to work out. So in this case here, okay, I've got it pretty much coated. So now what I'm going to do is, once again, here's my beef stock. You can see the color of it. It's got some Worcestershire sauce, and it also has some tomato paste in it. I'm just going to put this right in. Okay, now as this heats up, okay, it's going to turn into a gravy for me. The idea behind it is I want the pie itself to have the meat itself to have some body to it. Now, here's something to consider. If it's too thick for you, okay, you can always put some more beef stock in, which I do have. All right, as you can see, as it's starting to come together, you can see that it's got the gravy. And what I want to do is I want to get this thick, so this way when I go to put it in my pie, it's not going to fall apart. There we go. When I made a test batch the other day, this pie was so good I could actually cut it with a pie server, and I could just lift it right up even though it didn't have a crust. All right. So now we're going to let that cook a little bit. All right, we want that to heat up. Okay, I don't need the broccoli. I don't need the peppers. I am going to put some onions into it. I can put the cheese away, and I'm also going to put in my mixed vegetables, and that's what's going to make it a cottage pie. The other thing I'm going to put in is, once again, salt, garlic salt, celery salt, white pepper, and then this particular recipe calls for some oregano to give it a little extra flavor. So that's the last thing I'm going to put into it. I just want to heat it up a bit more, as you can see. Oh, beautiful. It's coming together and it's thickening up, and that's just what we want. So I'll give that a few more minutes, and with this we're going to put on a potato topping. Normally the recipe calls for mashed potatoes, okay? Now these are mashed potatoes, but there's just one little difference to it. I made this duchesse style, which means it has some egg in it. Why did I put the egg? Okay, because what's going to happen is when I top this pie off and I put it in the oven, it's going to caramelize, and it's going to get a nice golden crust to it, and that's what makes it good. It's not going to be crunchy, but it's going to have just enough mouthfeel to it where it's going to have, you can see the difference too. It's not going to look like these mashed potatoes. It's going to actually look golden, okay? What I did was I put, there was 3 pounds of potatoes, and I put in, I can shut this off now, and I put in 5 egg yolks only, okay? And as a result of that, I mixed it up. But before I put the egg yolks in, I tasted it. Once again, I put in celery salt, the 3 salts, plus some white pepper. If you're leery about tasting something with raw eggs, taste it first. It was good. I put in my egg yolks, and that's the end result. So here, all right, this is perfect. We're going to let this cool a bit, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use one of my glass, once again, one of my glass pie plates. Now, to this I'm going to put in Mixed vegetables, how much? A good amount. I'm going to say this is a regular chef's spoonful, so I'm going to give it like 1, 2, we'll give it 3 chef spoons. All right, we're going to mix that up. To that, we are going to add a good chef spoon of onions. All right. We are not going to put any onions into our chicken pie, so let's just see when I mix this up. All right, what we have. There we go, looking good so far. Now once again, you got to remember everything in here is cooked. So when I put it in the oven, the only thing I'm actually going to do is get the potatoes, and I want to give them some color. All right, now the potatoes are cold. This is actually warm, but what will happen is the shepherd's pie itself, it'll get a little stiffer because the gravy itself is going to thicken up in the oven. It's 385 degrees, but what I'm concerned with is the potatoes. They're going to get a nice golden color to them. So, what do I have to do now? Let's season it up. All right, once again, here's our salt. Here's our celery salt. Now, celery salt, I like using this because it brings out the flavor of a lot of things. If you're a hot dog freak like I am, grill a hot dog, put a little celery salt on it and nothing else. You will be surprised at the flavor it brings out. Here's our garlic. And finally, here's our white pepper. Okay, now once again, we're going to mix that up. Okay, now because I'm using a Pyrex pie plate, normally it'll say, well, you should spray it. No, because I know it's not going to stick. All right, this is going to come right out. So what I'm going to do is load the pie plate. There we go. Now once again, I'm loading in the middle. Why? Because this way I can, as I push down in the middle, it's automatically going to fill up the sides. If you fill one side, you're going to have a lopsided pie. So basically, you just keep on from the middle. If you find that you have a lot more filling, don't worry about it because it can mound it up in the middle. Okay, in this case here, as you can see, I'm just going to push down. And look at that, perfect. It fills out my pie. Okay. Now the last thing I need to do is just take my potatoes. Once again, I'm going to put the potatoes in the middle and work towards the outside. I'll put this on the side. Now I have a regular kitchen spatula. Okay. There's a couple different ways you can do this. If you really want to get fancy, you can get a pastry, a star tip, put it in a pastry bag, and you can actually flute around. In my case here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the potatoes on, all right, and I'm going to show you how to make a little bit of a design with the potatoes, with a spatula. Now once again, as you can see, if I work my way around the pie, I'm going to save a little too for our chicken pot pie, but I'm working from the center towards the outside. And see, I'm going to just bring it right up on the edge, which is perfect. All right, here. Now, there's like a good mason. If I missed a spot, I can just fill it right in. There we go. And one more spot right here. So, now, okay, now if I wanted to, I could leave the pie like this. It's rustic looking, like you'd find in a cottage. Or what you can do is I'm going to take my spatula and I can just go right around. Okay, and I can level the playing field a little bit. Okay, same over here. It's not a fantastic design, but at least it's a little better than what we had. Now these potatoes I'm going to save because we're going to put that on our chicken pot pie. Now, once again, this is done. We're going to put this in the oven. We're going to give this about 25 minutes, and then we'll take a look and see how it's going. It should have a nice, by the time it's done, it should have a nice golden crust on top. Now remember, everything is pre-cooked. All right, so this way we're only concerned about giving it some color. All right, now what we're going to do is I want to work on my chicken filling. As you can see, okay, what I have here is I took thigh meat. Now the recipe called for chicken breast meat. Breast meat's okay, but it's like, I compare it to like a button mushroom. There's not much flavor to it. So in this case, what I did, I bought chicken thighs. Now, in my opinion, the best part of the chicken is usually the thigh meat or drumstick because it has a lot of flavor. So what I did was I had about 8 thighs, little salt, pepper. I put it in a convection oven for about 30 minutes at 250 degrees, okay? Lower temperature, longer cooking time. This way they stayed nice and juicy for me, okay? And then if you'll notice this one section right here, golden color, that was the pan drippings. So I wanted to get all the flavor I could. So once I cooled the chicken, I took it off the bone, cut it up. This is what we have. Then I put the pan drippings in. So what I want to do now is I'm going to turn around. I want to heat this. The other thing I have is chicken stock, but before that, we're going to put in some, once again, we're going to put in some superfine flour because I want to turn around and I want to get this to the point where it creates a nice gravy. So that's our superfine flour. Okay. I have a handy dandy spoon here. So now, once again, I kept the chicken in the refrigerator. It's very important sanitation-wise. You don't want to leave anything out too long. Even though it's cooked, it's not a good practice. You want to use the things as you get ready. You come up and you can use it in order. It makes for a better dish that way. So as you can see, the chicken's going to be coated. And if that's not enough of my chicken stock, I can always go in the refrigerator and get some more, but I'm looking to make a sauce. And for this particular dish, we're going to use the mixed vegetables. I do have some onions left over. I don't want to see them go to waste. I will put them into the chicken pot pie, and we're going to use these. I'm going to make 3 dishes, okay, individual size. This is what we're going to use. So this should be more than enough to give me 3 dishes. And the other thing I'm going to show you is, even though we had the mashed potatoes, I'm going to show you how to make some homemade dumplings, and you can put on one. So you can have chicken and dumplings, or you can have chicken and duchesse potatoes once again. So that's coming up. Now here, all right, I'm going to let that heat up a bit. Okay, that's looking good. So now, this is 2 cups chicken broth. It's going to go in, and I'm going to leave it on full throttle. As you can see, if all goes well, it's going to start to thicken up for me. If it doesn't, if it's thickening but not thick enough, I can always put some more flour into it. So at this point, we have the chicken that's cooked. The only thing I put on the chicken was salt and pepper. Okay. And to that, what we're going to do, we're going to add, once again, our 3 salts plus our pepper. That'll make for a very nice dish. Okay, the big thing is you want to get a nice sauce to go with this. That's important. The thicker it is, the better off it is, because otherwise it wouldn't be a chicken pot pie. It'd be like a chicken soup pie, and we don't want that. So you want to thicken this up as much as you can. Now, if you didn't want to use superfine flour, you could use cornstarch. Problem with cornstarch is you use it once, and if you go to refrigerate this, anything that's left over, it's going to get so jellified that you're going to have to really heat it to get it back in solution again. Problem with that is then you start to overcook your food, and you don't want to. You could also use arrowroot if you like. Arrowroot, well, actually, it's a little bit more expensive than cornstarch, but arrowroot, for the most part, is what you see is what you get. So let's say it was this thick, it's going to stay that way even when it's chilled. You don't have to worry about overcooking the food. And as you can see, this isn't too bad. It's going to thicken up for us. So I'm just going to continue cooking this. Didn't even take 5 minutes, which is good. So that's one of the benefits of using superfine flour. And once again, once we put the vegetables into it and we season it up and we put it into our dish, we'll put potatoes on the top. Everything here is pretty much cooked. So the only thing we're doing is reheating, and we're also going to make sure that we have on the top there, it's going to get a nice golden color. And in the case of the dumplings, they're going to cook. The dumplings are going to be towards the chicken to be nice and not, I don't want to say mushy, but they're going to be a little soggy, but they're still going to have some bite to them. And the top side, that's going to be golden, so you're going to get the best of both worlds. You're going to get a dumpling that not only has, it's going to be like a biscuit on top, but it's going to be like soft inside the pie itself. This is turning out very well. Okay, now, turning out so good, I'm just going to shut it off. Now, you got to remember too, even though if it takes like 20 or 25 minutes to get a crust, this is going to heat and it's going to get thick on the inside of the oven as you cook it. So that's one of the things. Yeah, it's perfect. As you can see, that's going to fill out our dish. So let's finish it off. Let's not let the onions go to waste. Here we go. All right, that's one. Put on the side for the dish person. Okay. Vegetables. Yeah, here we go. That's about 2 chef spoonfuls. All right, here. Now, if you didn't want to make a pie, little secret, put a little bit more milk or cream into this and put the vegetables and everything I've done here, and you'd have cream of chicken soup. Or you can have like, instead of having a pie, you can make it like a stew. You can have like a chicken stew with the vegetables. So I like the way this is looking. It's got some nice color to it. And we're also, it's got, look at that, it's nice and thick when we put it into our pie shells. So, let me just load them up. Once again, I'm not going to spray. I don't have to because I know it's not going to stick. All right, towards the center. Okay. Once again. I have more than enough. Perfect. I'll portion it out and then I'll come back if I want to put some more in. That's it. And finally the last one. Now, one of the things about making these pies individually, I can tell you honestly, if you forget to do something, like one thing I didn't do is I didn't season this, so I can individually go back and I can season each one of these, and which is what I'm going to do. Let's see, I'll make a hearty, a little bit more in each one. Okay. And like anything else, I'm not going to let it go to waste. I'm just going to let this set this on the side. Okay. Now, I can get this out of the way. Okay. Now, let's bring up our, remember I told you, we're going to turn around, we're going to make some dumplings. So I need a half a cup of milk to go into this. Then we're going to mix it up. And get 1 cup, about halfway. All right, if I need more milk, I'll put some in. Okay. So now I get my whip again, and I'm going to mix it up. Now, this batter itself, I'm going to put a little bit more. There we go. A little bit more milk into it, not much. Give it a splash. I want to be able to plop the batter right on top of the pie itself. So as you can see, as it's coming together, it's going to be very doughy, and that's exactly what I want. Okay, just a tad more milk because it's beginning to stick. Here we are. And the other thing I'm going to do here, once again, let's give it some flavor. All right, a little salt, a little celery salt, garlic salt, and white pepper. Okay, mix it all up a little bit. So when you have a problem getting it out of the wire whip, come on over here. You get a fork. It fits in between, and voila, just like this, you can push right out. All right, now the dumpling dough, it should be, number one, it should be sticky, and number two, it's going to be, you don't want to handle this with your hands, okay? It's going to be, just imagine a bread dough that you'd have to use a lot of flour. In this case here, it's sticky, and it's sticky for a reason because that's the nature of this particular batter. So what I can do now, all right, I'll go with this one in the middle. All right, and all I'm going to do is plop. All right, now the thing about this is the dumpling itself, I don't have to coat the top. Let's just say I want to put like maybe 4 dumplings on it. Tell you what, we're going to go 5 dumplings. I'll go around, and we'll put one right in the middle. Okay, so the part that's down against the chicken is going to stay nice and moist. The top is going to get some nice color, and it's going to get a little crunch to it. So we'll put a smaller one right here in the middle. All right, that's our dumplings. I'm just going to put mashed potatoes on each one. All right. Now, if the mashed potatoes get too stiff, don't be afraid to turn around and work them a little bit, especially with the spatula. Okay, I'm going to go right in the middle. Okay, middle again. So these are a little bit thicker, so a little cold, so I have to work with them a little bit gingerly, because what I don't want to do is you press down too much, it's going to push the filling right out of the dish. All right, here we go. Another thing I can do too. All right, I'll show you. Spatula is too big. You want to use, let's say, the right tool for the right job. Look at this, nice finesse. And I can just coat the top. Okay, now it has prong marks from the fork, but you know what? It actually does make it look a little rustic as well. So this is all set here. We're going to do this. Now in this case here, because some of the filling could come out, I'm going to get put it in the oven. Let's see, should be fine. Because like I said, once again, all we want to do is we want to just heat up the top, okay? Heat up the inside of the pie as well, but we want to get some nice golden crust to the pie itself. So now these are going in. All right, let's see, we have 9 minutes on our quiche. So we'll put these in a rotation. Here's one. All right, here's two. There's dumplings. There's the last pie. Now, Normally when you have something in the oven, if it calls for 35 minutes, you don't want to open the oven door for at least half that time. Since we have 9 minutes to go, I want to show you. Here it's coming. See how the quiche is coming along? Okay, so it looks like 35 minutes might do the trick. Yes, it's firming up nice. So in 9 minutes, we have a winner. Okay, so now our timer went off for our quiche. So let me pull them out. Let me get a rack. We're going to let it cool. Now, it's real important that once you take something out of the oven, you don't want to turn around and cut it right away. You want to let it cool. So, oh, yes, looking good. So, remember how it looked before? Look at that. Our quiche is looking really, really good. Okay. Crust is nice and firm. Okay, and we still have our chicken pot pie and our cottage pie inside. So basically, what I can do is, I don't want to cut it right away. I'm going to wait, all right? Because once again, you want to let it set. Now, whether you're dealing with any kind of pies or any other kind of baked goods, you got to remember, the hotter it is, the softer it is. So as it comes down to room temperature, it's going to firm up. A lot of my students, they rush. They pull a cake out of the oven, okay? They go to cut it, and it falls apart. It's too soft. You can't cut it. You have to let it come up to temp, okay? What's one of the things? When you're baking, as you put something in the oven, as the temperature goes up, certain chemical reactions happen. So once you get something, okay, that's going to be up like 350 degrees, let's say if you're making a cake or higher 400 degrees bread, it actually fixates. Okay, and at that point, what happens, a lot of the moisture is going to get baked off. It goes off and just vaporizes into steam. Okay, so if you were to pull that loaf of bread out of the oven, let's say, and go to cut it, it's going to collapse because as the temperature drops once again, the structure will get some firmness. Why? Because a lot of things that are warm, okay, they don't have structure. Now, in the case of our pies, yeah, they're dripping out, but that's good though, because number one, like I said, everything was cooked. It's only a matter now of we're going to heat it up. So in this case, we still have a few more minutes to go before I cut, and I'll plate one of these up, but they are looking very good, nice and firm as you can see, some wonderful color. So this should be very good. Now, if you don't particularly like this recipe, this crust recipe, feel free, you can go out and use a store-bought crust. You don't have to do any baking, you don't have to do any mixing. You can just go buy it, roll it out, and you can put it in a pie shell. If you do want to use like Grandma's recipe, or you have a special recipe, feel free to do that. And you'll see it makes a big, big difference. So, what I'm going to do, so I don't burn my hand, I'm going to cut. Oh, looking good. All right, let's see. Now, let's see if I can get this out. This is actually an offset spatula. I don't have a pie server, so let's see if I can do this without making a total mess. Now, one of the things that makes a difference, let's see, here we go. Oh, perfect. Ouch, ouch, ouch. It's still a little warm, okay? So in this case here, I'm going to let it set a little longer. But as you can see, it's still firm. The eggs are firm. Vegetables are cooked. So when my associates here in the kitchen get a taste, they can let me know how it is. By experience, I know that the right amount of seasoning goes in. And like I said, I'm just not a salt and pepper person. I like to use a variety of salts because it brings out the flavor. It's got good color. The crust is looking good. So I'm very happy with this. One of the things about quiche, you can actually eat it hot, warm, or cold. If you let it warm up to like room temp, it actually brings out more of the flavor. If something is real cold, you're not going to get that true flavor. But something like this, pull it out of the refrigerator, 10, 15 minutes on the counter, and you'd be surprised or else you can zap it in the microwave. Give it about 30 seconds, and it'll bring it up to room temp as well, which isn't too bad. Okay, so that's looking very good. Basically, one of the things that I tell my students is the fact that baking itself and cooking, it's trial and error. You try a recipe, and then you can tweak it one way or another, and that's real important because, and you always want to write down the recipe and write down what you did if you did have to make some other changes to it, because this way you can duplicate it the next time. You don't have to stop and think, okay, what did I do at this point? Okay, so our quiche is nice and cool. Put that on the side. Let's see. Let's check our other pie that we put in. Oh, beautiful. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move over the chicken pot pies. There we go. There's one. There's two. And what I want to do is, oh, beautiful. Here is our shepherd's pie. Okay, cottage pie, so I'm just going to put this here to cool. As you can see, once again, we have that beautiful crust. All right, these will be done in a minute, which is good. So let's set the timer for, I'm going to give it 3 minutes. That should be done. That should be perfect and have a nice crust to it. All right, 3 minutes it is. But now as we look at this, okay, now remember, look at the design we made with it. It looks nice and appealing. And once again, because it has that duchesse potatoes, all I did was take mashed potatoes, seasoned it up, tasted it, and then I put in 5 egg yolks to 3 pounds of russet potatoes. That's the end result. But once again, because it's right out of the oven, it's warm and it's going to be very loose. So the longer it sets here, the more it's going to have a good consistency, and it's going to thicken up for me. Now what I want to do is I'm going to turn this way, let that cool. Okay, here is our one quiche. Let me bring my other cooling rack and bring it over. So now let's see how we have 2 minutes. Oh, beautiful. We have 2 minutes on our chicken pot pies, and when you see, when I pull out these dumplings, the homemade dumplings, it's going to get quite the, what a difference between when it went in, they were raw, they were flat. Now when they come out, you're going to have some very nice dumplings. Like I said, crunchy on the top, they're going to be soft on the bottom, and I know the chicken pot pie is going to be very nice and hot and flavorful. Okay, our pies are out of the oven. Let's look at the first one here. Look at those dumplings. Remember what I said? They're going to be crunchy on the top, soft on the bottom. So let me get a plate, okay? And I want to get a serving spoon. If the spoon is too big, it'll wreck it. If the spoon's the right size, I should be able to get one of those dumplings right out. So let's see how it is. Let's see how we did. Here we go. All right. Oh boy. Look at that. And I'm sure I can get a volunteer or two later on that's going to tell me how good this is, but look at that. We have a nice, oh boy, you should be here and smell the aroma of this chicken pie, okay? So that's one, as you can see. Here's our biscuit. Excuse me, I keep on saying biscuit, it's a dumpling. Look at the bottom, okay? It's nice and smooth, and the top's got a crunch to it, all right? We already sliced our quiche. Now, our other pie, look at how we have that nice golden color, and the top itself, look at that. It's going to have a nice mashed potato flavor. We got chicken and dumplings, and in this case here, we have our chicken and potatoes. Once again, beautiful. Look at that, how nice and thick that turned out, okay? Lastly, we're going to turn around. Now, if all went well and this thickened up for me, I should be able to cut a slice. So let's see how we did. Feels pretty good. So let's get a slice here. Let me get my offset spatula. Let me get another plate and let's see how it works. Look at that. Not too shabby, okay? I can get a little bit more of the meat, but here we go. Now remember, this was no crust. We're going to pull this out. It thickened up very nice, and what I want to do is, if you can see the difference, look at how nice and thick that is. So it turned out very, very well. If you want to get it thicker, once again, you're going to use more flour, okay? So here we have it. We have our chicken pot pie with our dumpling, okay? Chicken pot pie, mashed potatoes, all right? We have our quiche, our loaded veggie quiche, and finally we have our cottage pie. So once again, you can have these for dinner or you use them as an appetizer, okay? Whether it's small dish or the large dish. So pie, it's not just for dessert anymore, now you can have it for the whole meal. You have been watching The Chef's Cook on CCP TV, the educational channel here at the Community College of Philadelphia. Till next time, I'm Chef Bill. Have a great day.